Hello there, Year 6. Miss Owen here for your final topic session of this half term. We've taken on so much information about the ancient Egyptians and all of their amazing achievements and when they existed, what we can learn from them, all those kinds of things. So I thought today we are going to create our final session as a showstopper, focusing on the Egyptian achievements. Now, you don't necessarily need to write today's date and title in because the showstopper that I'm going to show you an example of what I'd like you to do in your books. You don't really want the date and the title sort of getting in the way of that. So our learning powers for today are independent because obviously you're going to go back through your books and you're going to look at all the notes that you've taken, all the learning that you've taken on to help you with your showstopper. Imagining is more about how you're going to present this, and I'll show you an example of that in a second. And reflectiveness, that's the most important one I would suggest for this one, because we're reflecting on our learning and reflecting on all of the things that we've taken on and that we've learned about the ancient Egyptians. Okay, now I've obviously put cultural, political and religious aspects in there because we're still focusing on that. Okay, and like we've learned from last lesson, the cultural aspect about how they lived and how they entertained themselves, what their daily life was like. The political is about who ruled when, what kind of rules were in place, did they grow their empire? And the religious, what did they believe in? How did they worship? How important was religion to them? All that kind of thing. And that's all the things that we've covered through this topic. So I'm not going to go through the wills just yet because I will do when I show you the activity that you're going to be doing. But the idea of today is that you're creating a double page spread in your topic book. Now, you've done something similar to this when you did it for science for our first topic, which was living things and their habitats, I believe. So if you've got your science book there, you could just go back and have a little look at that because it'll give you a good indication of the kind of thing creating for today's lesson. And the idea is on this double page spread is that you almost amalgamate everything that you've learned about ancient Egyptian through this topic onto this double page spread. It becomes like an information page for our year groups. Say we were showing our books off to the year 4s or the year 5s. What could we have learned from our ancient Egyptian topic? Okay, so what we're going to do is first is a bit of a total recall quiz, and I'll show you that in a second. Then I'm going to sort of do a bit of a recap on all the things that we've learned about the ancient Egyptians with a little bit of information. Then I'm going to show you a waggle of a double page spread for your ancient Egyptian showstopper. And then there's also some links to some websites that you've also been sent today that you might find useful to go away and do a little bit of extra research to use for your showstopper. Okay, so that's the general gist of this lesson. Okay, first of all, let's do our total recall quiz. These questions are linked to all of the areas that we've covered in our topic so far. Okay, so I'll go through them, pause the video, have a go, all right? Which continent is Egypt found on? Number 1. Number 2, in what year approximately did the first settlers arrive in Egypt? Number 3, what river runs through Egypt? And as an extra little point, what percentage of the river is within Egypt? We've looked at percentages in maths, hence why I put that one in there. And it is something I covered when we looked at them within our lesson. Number 4, who were just below the pharaoh in the social pyramid of Egypt? So we looked at that social pyramid before with our slaves and our peasants being right at the bottom and our pharaoh being right at the top. Who was just below the pharaoh? Number 5, what is the meaning of the word hieroglyphics? Number 6, why was being a scribe a good job to have? Number 7, approximately how long did it take to build the pyramids at Giza? I'm really sorry about this watermark. I do apologise. Number 8, where were the pharaohs buried during the New Kingdom? Number 9, who discovered King Tut's tomb and in what year? Number 10, how long did Cleopatra rule for? Okay, so pause the video now, have a go at this total recall quiz, and then I'll show you the next slide with the answers on it. Okay, so here we go. Here are our answers. What continent is Egypt found on? Sorry, it was Africa. In what year approximately did the first settlers arrive in Egypt? It was 7,500 BC. Percentage of the river, and the river is the River Nile, and the percentage is 22% that actually runs through Egypt. Viziers and priests, so advisors and holy men and women, were just below the pharaoh on the social pyramid. Meaning of hieroglyphics is holy writing. Why was being a scribe a good job to have? Well, you were your own boss, you were considered very important, you were high on the social pyramid, you had a good standard of life, of living, I should say, all those kinds of reasons. How long did it take to build the pyramids at Giza? Roughly 20 years. Where were the pharaohs buried during the New Kingdom? They were buried in the Valley of the Kings. Who discovered King Tut's tomb and in what year? It was Howard Carter in 1922. And how long did Cleopatra rule for? It was approximately 30 years. Okay, so before we do a bit of a recap on our ancient Egyptian topic, I thought I'd just go through some of those key words that have popped up over the last couple of sessions, well, over the whole topic really. So dynasties, hopefully you can remember what a dynasty is, but where people had power and passed on leadership, so pharaoh to the next generation. Kingdoms. Historians use three main kingdoms to define the ancient ancient Egypt, so the Old, Middle, and New Kingdom. An Egyptologist is someone who studies the ancient Egyptian civilization, so that's like Howard Carter. The three seasons that we had, we've got the Akhet, which was the flooding season, Peret, growing, and Shemu, which is the harvesting season. And hieroglyphics. The ancient Egyptians' form of writing, historians have used the Rosetta Stone to decode the meanings of them. Remember when we looked at hieroglyphics, we looked into the Rosetta Stone and when it was discovered, and it was kind of like a code-breaking lock almost. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and do a quick recap on all the different things that we've covered in this topic because it might be useful for you to include it in your showstopper activity. Okay. The idea of the showstopper is that we're going to be concentrating on the achievements of the Egyptians. So what are the Egyptians most known for? What were their achievements? What can we learn from them? That kind of thing, okay? But obviously we need to know where Egypt is, don't we? So you could talk about where it is in the world, when the first settlers arrived. You could talk about the physical and human features of the country. So look back at the lesson when we talked about the culture, the landscape, all that kind of thing. You could talk about the River Nile, all of that really important stuff when it comes to the actual country itself. You could talk about farming. We did a whole lesson on looking at the importance of the Nile, particularly in terms of farming and how they use the River Nile to support their farming calendar. So we talked about the use of a shadoof, didn't we? And all the kinds of things they could have that they did grow. So they grew things like wheat, barley, figs, melons. The most important one that they grew was obviously grain. They used it for making bread and porridge and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so you could do a whole little section on the farming aspect of the ancient Egyptian civilization and how they created these amazing canals from the River Nile to their fields to keep their fields watered. It's a huge achievement for the Egyptians, very ahead of their time in terms of that. You could do a little bit about the ancient Egyptian timeline if you wanted to. So some really important aspects of the Egyptian timeline, such as when the Pyramid of Khufu or the Great Pyramid of Giza was built. You could talk about when Cleopatra reigned. You could talk about when they started using hieroglyphics. You could talk about the chronology of ancient Egypt if you wanted to. Like I said, you could talk about the Nile. Now, I would suggest you definitely include some information about the Nile. You could talk about the water, the uses of the Nile, was what we focused mainly on, wasn't it? And all that kind of useful stuff. And we looked back at the importance of the River Nile to the ancient Egyptians and the Egyptians still today, really. You could talk about the pyramids. So here, this is an image of sort of the evolution of the pyramids, right back from the Step Pyramid up to the Great Pyramids at Giza. You could talk about how they were the tombs for the kings, for the pharaohs, and the size of them related to the importance of the person who was buried within them. You could talk about one particular pyramid if you wanted to create a little bit or do a little bit of research into one particular pyramid. You could talk about the ancient Egyptian civilization in terms of society. So you could talk about the social pyramid, who was at the bottom, who was at the top, who was considered important, who was considered not so important, that kind of thing. You could talk about mummification if you want to. Now, we haven't really discussed mummification in our topic lessons, but you did have a lot of input on mummification in your English lesson. So it might be that you want to go back and have a little look at the stages of mummification and pop that into your showstopper. You could talk about hieroglyphics. Again, I would definitely maybe include some information about hieroglyphics because they are a huge achievement of the ancient Egyptians, and how they saw the importance of writing down information about their kings, their religion, so that future generations and future people, thousands of years down the line, could understand a bit more about them. So a huge achievement of them. You could talk about the gods, do a little bit of information about their religion. You could talk about the pharaohs, important pharaohs if you wanted to, such as Cleopatra. When we did our lesson on Cleopatra, we gained lots of information about her from that. So there's lots of areas that we've covered. It's actually quite nice to look through it now and be reflective about how much we've actually taken on. But your job now is to create a double-page showstopper in your topic books. Okay, we've done this before, like I said, for science, so you could always go and have a little look there if you wanted to see what kind of thing I'm looking for. But I am going to show you a Waggle now. Okay. Now the wolves. I've sort of separated it down into that Bronze are going to talk about 3 particular things that they've enjoyed learning about when it comes to the ancient Egyptian civilization. Include those in their showstopper. Silver is to include sort of 4 or 5 aspects that you found really enjoyable, and gold is to gather information right across the topic and includes that into your showstopper. Now, I said it could be a double-page spread. Now, I did one, obviously to show you as Waggle, but I could have done 2 double-page spreads with the amount of information that we've taken on. But obviously that's completely up to you as to what you put into your books. And actually, it'd be quite nice if you do this in your books. I know some of you might want to do it on, things like PowerPoint or something like that. And as lovely as that is, it'd be quite nice that you do this maybe away from the screen ever so slightly. Just a suggestion. But of course, if you want to use PowerPoint and things like that, you're more than welcome to. But double-page spreads in your topic books look really quite nice. Okay, just wanted to show you these as well before I show you the Waggle, which is the you've been sent these as additional links for today, but these are really useful websites. Some of them we've used throughout this topic that have given us some interesting information. So this one was about the 10 top facts about ancient Egypt, so that one's quite useful. There's this one which is, oh, sorry, internet went a bit down then, which gives you things about ancient Egypt. It's got loads of information there, which is really quite useful. And then there's this one, which is the Duxters one, which I've sent to you before, but is really useful. It's got it broken down into different aspects. So say you were looking at, I don't know, say you were looking at women's roles if you wanted to within Egypt, it takes you straight to that. Okay, so you could talk about their particular roles within the society of ancient Egypt. And then this one as well, which again, is just full of information that could be really useful for you to use when it comes to your research. If you want to do extra research, those are just there if you want to do extra research. If you want to just use your understanding of all the information you've taken on so far, or go through your topic books, that's absolutely fine. But this one's quite nice because it's broken down into different time periods within the ancient Egyptian civilization. So we've got the New Kingdom here, so we could go there, read more. Might be that you just guys want to have a little look through these. That's perfectly fine. And it's got loads of information about the New Kingdom there. All right, so those are just some really useful websites. What I'm also going to send to you today is this. It's going to come as a separate thing from the link, so just be aware of that. And it's a booklet that is absolutely full of information about different aspects to do with ancient Egyptians. All right, so you've got daily life, you've got the Nile, flooding, moving the water. That's all about those canals, which are really good. You've got things about the pyramids, the tombs, their afterlife. So it's full of information. All right, so please use that if you need to. Okay, so this is the Waggle that I've been telling you about. Like I said, I did one double page spread. I could have probably done 2 or 3 with the amount of information that we've taken on. Okay, but this is sort of roughly what you wanted to look at. Now, I couldn't fit on everything that we've covered in this topic. I haven't talked about the pharaohs, which I thought was quite a useful thing to talk about. But what I have done is picked out things that I think actually are huge achievements for the ancient Egyptians, such as the pyramids were huge achievements. The culture was quite an achievement. The farming, how they farmed, and obviously the hieroglyphics. Now, I went on and I printed some photos off to stick into my Waggle, which you're more than welcome to do, but obviously have a go at drawing some of them as well if you haven't got access to a printer. You don't necessarily have to include pictures if you don't want to, but it just breaks up the page a little bit, doesn't it, and adds a little bit of colour to it. But basically, your double page spread is going to include as much information as you can about the different aspects of the ancient Egyptian civilization that we've learnt about. All right, so if I just go a little bit closer up on this page, I've done about the River Nile, the farming, what seasons and when they happened, the culture. And then on this side, I've talked about the pyramids, like I said. I didn't include all that much information about the pyramids because I wanted to have a little bit more about the religion and hieroglyphics, but you need to determine which areas you want to talk about on your showstopper. So it's completely up to you. I haven't talked about daily life, but you might want to. Like I said, I haven't talked about the gods, but you might want to. So, going through everything that we've covered this topic, it's up to you to determine what you include on your double page spread, what you consider important and what you found interesting about the ancient Egyptians. Okay, so if you want to go off now, use that booklet that I've sent through to you, maybe use some of those website pages to help you gather some information, but also use your topic book because you've taken a lot of information about our unit through your topic work, okay? I hope you've really enjoyed this topic of ancient Egyptians. I've thoroughly enjoyed creating these lessons for you. And don't forget to send pictures to your teachers of your double page showstoppers. Have a lovely day and I will see you all again very soon. Bye!